In the near future, mysterious creatures appear out of nowhere and start killing mankind, causing an apocalyptic event that doesn't leave many survivors. There are many theories about what happened, like a bug carrying an infection, a purple haze, and a punishment for humanity, but they're all rumors and nobody has the real story. In town, Paul is looking for supplies when suddenly the sirens start wailing. He immediately runs out and makes his way through the streets, hiding when necessary and moving away from any screams and bombs. As the city gets covered in black smoke, Paul makes it to an abandoned house in the outskirts where he reunites with his babies, who he must take care of alone. 15 years later, Paul's boys have grown into healthy teenagers. They live in the same house and go out during the day to search for supplies, but they stay hidden at night. As soon as the sun starts to set, Joseph covers the windows and tells their dog Rocco to get in the house. Paul waits outside until he sees Thomas come back and scolds him for being late. Thomas explains that he likes helping their neighbors, the Rose family, who have a farm. Then the three of them make sure to lock every door and window before having dinner. Paul scolds Thomas once more, saying that if he ever is late again he won't be allowed to leave the boundaries anymore. Joseph mocks his brother for it and an argument soon escalates into a physical fight, but Paul quickly stops them and reminds them that they're men, not animals. After dinner, Paul watches his sons play chess but gets distracted when Rocco begins scratching and growling at the floor. Seeing it as an omen, Paul and Thomas go downstairs and are startled by the sudden banging on the door. It seems the creatures are trying to get in, so they immediately hold the door to stop them from forcing it open. There's lots of shaking and pounding for several seconds until the creatures give up and leave. Then Thomas calls Joseph out for not helping, but Joseph reveals he's been listening to learn more. There were 3 attempts, the first one was 10 seconds, the second was 20, and the last one just 1. Joseph believes that the first was a test and the second was the actual attempt to break through, while the third one was just a frustrated hit. The next day, they check the door and see all the claw marks on the wood. The door has lost strength, so Paul and his boys go out to look for wood to reinforce it. They bring all their findings back to the house, and while Thomas chops the wood, Paul checks on Joseph, who is building something in the barn. After some prodding from Paul, Joseph admits he's been trying to build a vehicle because he's tired of feeling confined and scared. However, he can't make it work. Paul is impressed and takes a look, quickly making a couple of changes that finally makes the car run. Excited, Paul takes the teens on a ride to teach them how to drive. They go home after an hour of wandering and Paul announces the windows still need reinforcement, so he sends the boys to the river to salvage. Thomas gets mad because he had been promised he could go to the farm today, but Paul says this is more important. The brothers leave in the car and Thomas starts blaming Joseph for this, saying Paul sent Thomas just to protect his brother. Joseph doesn't think he needs protection, so Thomas gets out of the car when they pass by the farm and asks Joseph to pick him up on the way back. In the house, Paul finishes reinforcing the door and takes a break to smoke alone by the waterfall. As he looks around, he sees a black creepy hole in the rocks. Meanwhile, Joseph goes to the river and ties himself to the car before descending into an old abandoned ship to look for supplies. Inside a locker he finds a pinup from a dirty magazine, which leaves him speechless for a second. Then he looks further inside and is suddenly startled when a bunch of bugs come out from a trash pile. They fly around him and try to reach his skin, so he has to get out of there fast. At the farm, Thomas helps the family with the chores, but it's soon revealed that his main reason to go there is the owner's daughter Charlotte. It's clear that the teens have a crush on each other and they go for a walk together on the field. Charlotte shows Thomas a rope tied to a tree, explaining that when she was little, she was only allowed to play outside if she was touching the tree, so she would tie herself to have more room to run while technically still attached to the tree. They also play a game in which they share crazy theories about what caused the apocalypse. When it's time for Thomas to go, Charlotte gives him a tight hug. The sun is starting to set, so both boys need to hurry up. Paul returns home and gets worried when he finds Rocco but neither of his sons. Joseph gets back in the car and at first it wouldn't start, but after a few tries he finally gets it moving. Thomas is running as fast as he can and slips, so he ends up falling in a crevice in the ground. When Joseph comes by to pick up his brother, he doesn't see him around and just keeps going. Once he makes it home and tells his dad what happened, Paul tells him to get inside and lock everything up while he and Rocco look for Thomas. In the crevice, Thomas wakes up with a very sore body. Using a lighter, he begins looking around the area and is shocked to see a creature reaching through a hole in the wall. It even screeches, which is heard by Paul and Rocco. Moving carefully, Thomas takes out a little knife and stabs the monster's hand, causing it to retreat into the hole. However, when Thomas steps back, a second creature appears above and grabs his face. Thomas has trouble breathing, but before he can pass out, Paul arrives and pulls the monster back to quickly kill it. After making sure Thomas is fine, Paul and Rocco find a tunnel that takes them right into the crevice. It's dangerous to run through the forest at this hour, so they decide to stay in the crevice until sunrise for protection and block the entrance. They can hear the creatures coming through the hole, so they get a flare ready, only for the ground to start shaking. It turns out the monsters are now moving underground and trapping the group in the crevice by covering the exit with dirt. As Rocco keeps on barking and the crevice won't stop rumbling, Paul tells his son and the dog to move back as he puts the flare inside the hole that is opening in the ground. When the creatures try to reach out, Paul creates a small explosion that sadly hits him as well. In the house, Joseph hears lots of creaking and starts planning. Minutes later he sits in front of the main door with a rope tied to his chair, and he falls asleep. Soon a creature moves the wood covering a hole in the door and reaches inside, making its nail grow to test if Joseph is truly asleep. When the boy doesn't react, the creature comes inside, only for Joseph to reveal he was pretending and pull the rope. A cage falls from the ceiling, instantly capturing the creature. Proud of himself, Joseph covers the cage with a blanket and goes to sleep. The next morning, he's worried because the others haven't come back yet, so he goes out in the car to search. Meanwhile, Thomas has dug through the fallen dirt to open the entrance again and is dragging his heavily wounded dad out. Rocco comes out as well and follows the noise of the car to find Joseph and guide him back to his family. The brothers immediately work together to carry Paul to the car and then to his bed at the house. While they discuss how to proceed, Thomas finally notices the cage and looks under the blanket, which causes the creature to go crazy. Joseph immediately puts the blanket back, explaining that light hurts the monsters. Then they bandage Paul's wounds while Joseph explains that last night the creature took 8 seconds to come in, the shortest time yet. He's also sure there was a second creature that went away. Their behavior is changing too quickly and Joseph concludes something isn't right. Thomas points out that the creatures are smart. Last night they killed a bunch in the cave and maybe they came here for revenge, because Charlotte said they rarely go to the farm. Joseph doesn't think they killed the creatures, he thinks only Paul did it. To prove himself, Thomas tries to kill the creature in the cage. Joseph tries to stop him because he wants to study it, and in the struggle the monster comes out, quickly hiding under the bed. When it finally peeks out, Rocco starts barking at it, so the monster transforms to attack. Joseph rushes to hold it down and Thomas then cuts its head off with an axe. Still wanting to learn more, Joseph takes the body to the barn and starts opening it up while Rocco and a bunch of bugs watch. No matter how much he cuts though, he gains no further understanding of what it may be. Then Thomas tells him that they should take Paul to Charlotte's farm because they have a better house and actual medicine. Joseph doesn't think the roses will help him, but Thomas forces him to come along. The brothers put Paul back in the car and drive to the farm, where Charlotte's parents prove Joseph right. They don't have enough medicine to spare, so they refuse to take in someone hurt so badly. Charlotte protests, but she's ignored. However, her parents do agree to let Thomas stay, which would leave Paul and Joseph with more resources at their house. Joseph immediately walks away, and when Thomas follows him, an argument ensues in which Joseph blames Thomas for their dad's incoming death. Furious, Thomas pushes his brother to the ground and starts choking him, but when he realizes what he's doing he pulls back. Joseph immediately gets in the car and drives away with his unconscious father, so Joseph joins the family at the farm. Afterward, Charlotte shares some actual good food with Thomas and shows him some of her belongings, which Thomas has never seen before. The teens share a sweet moment and kiss, only to be interrupted by Charlotte's father, who sends his daughter to another room. On his way back, Joseph notices the sheep running in fear and mounds of dirt everywhere, which means the creatures are moving underground. When he makes it home, he sees a path of dirt near the wall, so he fears the monsters may be underneath the house. After taking care of his dad, Joseph goes to the barn and starts gathering objects to make a new plan. He also starts blocking all the windows, and as he moves around the house, he falls in when he steps on a carpet. There's a hole under it, so he concludes the monsters are already inside the building. At the farm, Charlotte finds Thomas snooping around the kitchen. He's still worried about his dad, so he wants to find some medicine and leave. Charlotte gives him the medicine and he thanks her with a hug as he promises to come back, unaware someone can overhear them. Thomas runs out, but before he can reach the gate, a farm employee points his gun at him, accusing him of stealing. A desperate Thomas tries to explain Charlotte gave it to him, but the man doesn't believe him. All the employees team up and take Thomas to the barn, where they tie him up and play some music to cover up what they're about to do to him. They grab Thomas' legs and a man gets ready to shoot them, but at that moment a hole appears under him and he falls, failing the shot. The other men run to check on him. At the same time, a creature jumps out of the hole. In the main house, Charlotte's parents wake up when they hear a noise. The father lights a candle to go investigate, only for a creature to get in the room and attack. The candle falls and immediately starts a fire while the monster jumps from the father to the mother, trying to kill them both. The father pulls it back and the mother runs out of the room to find her daughter, but the creature jumps on her before she can go too far. The monster shakes to transform again and starts puking all over the woman before striking. In her bedroom, Charlotte hears how both her parents are murdered. Once the noises stop, she comes out and is horrified to discover a trail of blood, which she follows until she finds the creature in the bathroom with her mother's body in its back. At the barn, the men are trying to fight off the creatures to no avail. One by one they start to get killed, and those who manage to get out are chased too as more creatures keep arriving. The barn soon catches on fire and Thomas manages to knock over the furniture he's tied to, breaking the wood to free his hands. At that moment a creature finds him, but before it can attack, it gets shot down by Charlotte. Afterward the teens run out and Thomas sees the house on fire. Charlotte explains her parents are gone, so they agree to go to Thomas' place. Back to Joseph, he throws a bunch of furniture into the hole, hoping to buy some time. Then he checks on his unconscious dad and kisses his forehead before getting ready to fight. The hole in the door suddenly opens, however it's just Thomas and Charlotte. Joseph admits he needs Thomas' help, but their conversation is interrupted by Paul finally waking up. He quickly takes the medicine and tells his sons to keep on fighting. Joseph shares his plan with the others and they gather all the gas cans they can find in the barn while Rocco keeps on barking to alert them of incoming danger. The group also moves an old freezer into the house. Next, Thomas and Charlotte begin reinforcing every remaining window while Joseph makes a pile of furniture and pours all the gas on it. On top, he also adds every explosive object he could find and one of his dad's cigarettes, which is slowly burning down. Suddenly the pile covering the hole starts shaking. At the same time a creature comes down the chimney in the room with Paul. From the hole another monster comes out and when it crosses a door, Thomas stabs it from behind. The creature immediately attacks back, but Thomas retrieves his knife and stabs it in the head, actually killing it now. A third one goes after Charlotte and she quickly shoots it down.